Welcome to another episode of Jamming with Jason. Hey, today I have a very special treat for you and for me as well. Now, I know a lot of you have commented, on some of the different stories, rock and roll stories, other things like that I've shared. And yes, I watch a lot of documentaries, I read a lot of bios, but I have to tell you that my guest today, Christian Swain, is one of the major sources where I have learned a lot of the stuff that I share as well. So it's an opportunity for me to geek out. He is a cool guy. And so, whatever you do, listen to this entire episode, because the fact that you're listening right now means there is something in this episode you need to dig into and hear today. So, with that, let's roll that episode. All right, Christian, I am so excited to have you here with me, man.
Hey, nice to be here, Jason. Thanks for being the hype man for me and rock and roll archaeology and Pantheon and the whole thing.
I know. I got to tell you, I've loved music for a long time, and I think it must have been 3 or 4 years ago, when I first hit the Rock and Roll Archaeology podcast. So everybody that's listening, you got to go out. We'll put notes in there, but really kind of made a lot of the music come to life more in understanding some of the pop culture stuff and some of the things behind the music, because I find that such an interesting, it just makes it come to life more when you understand some of that stuff and you get the context behind it.
Wow, you figured it all out, and I didn't have to say anything. That's why we're doing this. Is we're trying to create a deeper emotional connection to this music, and I call it the rock and roll. Call it rock and roll archaeology, but it's really all the music of the late 20th century. And we just think that historians will probably refer to it as the rock and roll era. That seemed to be the dominant music of that 50-60 year period. When music was so important that it determined our tribes as we were growing up. Hey, musicians never before definitely maybe from Bing Crosby back were ever considered the elites of any society anywhere in human history. And they won't be again here fairly shortly. We're already seeing that they don't have the cachet and the power that the quote unquote rock star did of the late 20th century. Musicians just were never in the elite category, and they were for a period of time where what they said mattered. People like Bob Dylan, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Who, even people like Nirvana or Pearl Jam on the other end. These really made a difference to people's lives, and it was in the foreground. I think that's important to make this point, is that music was something to be paid attention to, and I don't think that's the case with music today. It's more back in the background again. Certainly the kids today do not determine their tribes by their music choice. It's more about their social media and their other interests. Music is now just another piece of their life, like gaming or any of the other activities that people do. But there was a period of time when music was just really, really special, and that's what we focus on.
Well, and I think it's, to me, again, it's a fascinating time, because I think it's, we'll get into more of this, I'm sure, too, about, changing society, the counterculture, all this kind of stuff that ends up kind of seeping into everything that we do. But to me, because growing up, I've always loved poetry as well, written some poetry, but poetry, music is poetry with music behind it, right? And it adds with the lyrics, and it adds such a different dimension to how, as humans, we actually relate to it, right? Because again, it's like if you were to take a lot of the lyrics and you just read them, it's like, well, that's kind of a stupid poem, you know, but you put the right music and the right feeling behind it, and all of a sudden it touches us in a totally different way, right?
Yeah. You ever watch a
And
movie without the soundtrack on?
it's not the
It's
same.
not the same at all.
No.
You're like, whoa, what were they thinking?
Well, and I think it was a lot of the way too for us to be able to express ourselves
Mhm.
and to make some change. I mean, you mentioned people like Dylan,
Yeah.
right? You know, I mean, the words that he was putting out there were trying to shake people up, to get people to realize that things can be different. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the whole, what I see as a beautiful thing of the counterculture, you know, and especially in the 60s and a lot of the time like that I see even today, we're kind of repeating a lot of that stuff, a lot of that same angst and cultural, you know, issues that we're dealing with there, we've never fully dealt with, and we're still dealing with them today again.
Yeah, I think you're right that that the battle lines are as drawn as they were 50 years ago, and I think that's a good thing. Um, but I might suggest that the revolt roles are reversed. The fact is that the counterculture of the 1960s is now the culture, and the counterculture of today is, what was then maybe referred to as the silent majority back
Mm.
then. That weirdly, and I think we said this in our episodes, part 1 and part 2 of 1969, that the counterculture won the culture. It was incorporated in. If you look at the progress that's been made from a cultural standpoint, those are the values that most Americans and Westerners abide by. Women being of equal value, civil rights, environmentalism, gay, LGBTQ rights. Those are all wins. What we didn't win was the politics.
Hmm.
And that has kept the other side alive, and still an opponent, instead of an embraced brothers and sisters out there. They still believe that society should be dictated a very particular way, whereas the counterculture, and now the culture, um, tends to believe that no, the individual gets its say, and that is paramount to that. And we're still fighting those arguments 50 plus years on. And one thing about this music that was really interesting is that it's a democratic music. And this kind of plays into, after World War II, American culture is dominant, primarily because we were the big winners. Our cities were not devastated like Europe and Asia was. We imported, or exported, our culture around the world. And out of that came this ability for 3 or 4 people to plug in and use electricity to sound much bigger than 3 or 4 people, and 3 or 4 chords, and you're in business out there. And that's kind of been this neat bottom up approach. And then what that means is that now lyrically, the interests are that of the common man, not the elites. If you think about music of the past, other than the folk music that was the street, but the popular music of whatever time, and I'll just throw opera out there as an example. That was not made for common people. It was made for the elites. And, America is not really supposed to be about elites. It's supposed to be about, the individual and the common person. And I think that's what that battle is what does that mean? And then how much freedoms do they get? We just, we tend to believe that, we live in a pluralistic society, and that, there's enough pie for everybody. And we needed to spend some time with our marginalized brothers and sisters and getting them into an equal position. And some people don't like that.
Yeah. Well, you still see that today. But again, like you said, that's an interesting twist on how you said it too, that what was the counterculture probably is the underlying culture today. It is the culture today, yeah. Right. Yeah. And what is the counterculture is kind of the backlash.
If you look at polling, there's still, there's about 30% of the population that, just rails against it. And they got a big megaphone. There's no two ways about that. They're well funded. They were the dominant culture. They didn't, become the Amish as much as I wish they would, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. I love the Amish. You go, you don't want to live with electricity and tools, fine. But, do you really need to make the rest of us do that? No. Right. So it's pretty simple, easy line for everybody to kind of figure out, I would think. And, so, the other side literally does not have the population or the polling to win most of these arguments. So, they're going about it in different ways.
Well, and I think it's interesting because, like you said, the music, you go back a couple hundred years, and that's what it was, right? Rich people show up over at somebody's house, and Mozart plays something for them, and that's it.
As right? The help, yeah.
That's and that was kind of it. For a long time, until recording kind of, came out to where, again, like you said, there were a lot of things. I want to say the first recordings were somewhere around the 20s ish. You
can go back to about the 1870s when recording begins, but the recording industry begins in the teens. That's when it really starts to become a thing. In the 20s, radio it becomes a dominant technology, which then makes it ubiquitous and allows people the average person to pick up and engage in.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that I've found interesting, and again, I've always loved music myself. I've always been drawn to it. That's where I tend to go, think in lyrics and music, or movie lines and things like that. It's just how my brain kind of works. But it's interesting too, because
you've been marinating in it.
I have been. I've always got my earphones in, but it's interesting too that there is such a draw to music in general, right? I mean, I was doing some research about YouTube. I think of any video on YouTube with over 1 billion views has one thing in common: music video.
Yeah.
Even if it's Shark Baby, or other stuff like that. But
thanks, Jason. I'm gonna get that stuck in my head for the next 2 days.
So will I. But anyway, sorry, I retract that. But just of how it really hits us all at kind of a deep level. And so I wanted to kind of go back, because I always like kind of the genesis stories too of why people are doing what they're doing today, right? Because I'm kind of in the same way. We all change over time. And I know earlier, your career wasn't always being a podcaster or talking about this kind of stuff. I know.
I came out of the womb a podcaster. What are you talking about?
And I know you've been a musician for a long time too, but maybe because I know it's always helpful for people to kind of understand the journey some other people have gone on, because sometimes people are kind of hiding or think that they have to fit a certain mold and that they can't do what they really want to do or love to do in life. And so they kind of stay stuck there. And I think you're one of those people too, that it was like, how did you get into this? What was some of the stuff that kind of got you to going, you know what, this is how I'm going to spend at least this next phase of my life, if not the rest of my life, doing this, which was completely different of what you started off doing.
Well, when I was 16, I was bitten by a radioactive spider. And
wrong story. I think there's a new movie about that again, but yeah.
Look, I've always, been, addicted to this. There's just, I guess, no other word for it. Since I was a kid, music, I can't imagine life without it, when you get right down to it. And I think it was, it's part of the entertainment experience of storytelling. And I just think that storytelling is, so critical to, the human species and civilization itself. I mean, I just think that that's a big factor of what separates us from maybe the other flora and fauna on this planet, is the ability to tell these stories and reiterate that to the next generations and further and further down the line, and be able to retain that and do something with it, is what we've been able to do. And I think we were talking before in the green room here that I think if humanity were to end, and an alien species were to show up and say, well, what is it about these human things that lived here, they'll come down to three major achievements. And one was the capture of fire. The second was the invention of the wheel, and the third is storytelling. And those three things, you can find anything that we do and trace it back to those three inventions or discoveries that were made, millennia ago. And so, I don't gravitate to the fire side or the wheel side. I leave that to the engineers and the scientists and the merchants and the executives and all of that sort of thing. I have always gravitated to the storytelling side of things. I find stories fascinating, and I mean that from, I think, every being, and I mean all forms of life have a story to tell, individually and collectively. And I think songwriting is sort of like the Cliff Notes version of all of that. It's how to, and maybe the hardest of the forms, because you have to tell a story in a short period of time, or you have to make it a point in a short period of time. And granted, it can be pretty innocuous, two people fall in love, or it can be complex, a point about life or growing old or complex subjects, and you can tell it, and I think those who do it with the most cleverness tend to use metaphor, analogy, double entendre, hidden meaning, and things like that. And those are the songs that I think have the most legs, that stay with us, and you keep going back and going, did he really mean that? Or and then through your life, those songs tend to mean something different. And I'll stop with one last thing, and that is the music itself touches a weird part of the brain that stays with us, almost in a way that smell does. How many times have you walked into some place that it's a smell just brought back these memories from decades ago, and you just immediately are put back in that place? Well, songs do exactly the same thing. They can put you back exactly where you were the first time you heard it, and you fell in love with it the first time. And I think that's really, really, really interesting and important. And on the other end of life, take Tony Bennett, for example, who, we all know has severe Alzheimer's at this point, and has had a pretty significant case for the last 5 or so years. And yet, while he has been unable to function or communicate naturally in speech, you put a microphone in that guy's hand and you start that band up, and boy, it all is right there, and it all comes back. And that's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, well, it is. And like you said, there's the idea too, like that, of where different songs or different things can bring up the memories from the past for us, help us relive some of those things. But like you said, those stories in song can mean completely different things,
Different
when
things to
done
different
right.
people.
Yeah, different things to different people, and different things.
Different from the artist who, there's plenty of evidence of, the artist going, you took what out of that? Okay.
or some of them, because I remember a Paul Simon interview where I think it was Sound of Silence, and somebody's asking him, what does that even mean, right? Because there's a lot of like really kind of different stuff in that song. Like, what did you mean when you wrote that line? And I remember him saying, that was 1970 whatever. I don't really remember that year. I was too stoned to remember what was going on, right? So yeah, because there's and that's the way with art in general anyway, right? Is it's
interpretive. Yeah.
It's interpretive, not necessarily what the artist meant, is how it's interpreted to the people who are viewing it or listening to it.
Yeah, and I just think that, look, we are all individuals. And we need to be treated as such, and given the freedom to be whoever we want to be. And I personally think that's, that is one of the unique features of America, and this experiment, this ideal, because we are not built on a particular people. We're not built on a shared history, or even a religion. We literally were, cobbled together from a variety of sources, and have tried to make that our primary mission, which is a thought, an ideal, not blood or soil. It literally is an abstract creation that we're all trying to maintain and achieve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because really, I mean, it's de Tocqueville's talking about the melting pot. We have been a melting pot in every different way, right? Even our music's,
I don't
everything
understand
else
why we don't embrace that. I mean, this talk of American exceptionalism. I chafe at that, like any educated person should. All peoples and countries have some exceptionalism about them. But what is American exceptionalism? Well, we probably, are made up of more people of the planet than anywhere else, even to this day. We started that way. Other people are catching up, but we started it. And yet we've really railed against it in many areas and times. I mean, obviously slavery comes to mind as the top notch there, women being chattel, but we've improved that concept over the last 240 years. And I think that's a great thing. And I don't know how long American dominance will continue. There's plenty of evidence that, we may have peaked. And if you listen to rock and archaeology, we kind of say that maybe we peaked in 1969, not just musically, but that's also the year that men landed on the moon, and that to us is the ultimate achievement. We got off the rock. That's insane. That's incredible. I think maybe we've squandered a bit of that opportunity, but at the same time, we made some great improvements along the way as well.
Yeah, well, and I think one of the things that I love so much about music too is it's a way to bring people together, right? That maybe come from so many different backgrounds, so many other things, but music is actually one of those things that we can have in common with other people, that we can share with other people, and that we can connect with other people about. That's kind of different than a lot of the other things about our life, right? It's kind of an equalizer in a lot of ways, because it doesn't matter whether you're black, brown, white, yellow, if you're a billionaire, if you're, a bum on the street, it's we can still all kind of come together and enjoy that time together.
Well, more so today than I even think in the past is that music used to create tribes. Especially when you started having these genres pop up in the 1970s. Our episode 21 is about that first, real big schism, which is, the hard rock or heavy metal. A lot of the critics and the intelligentsia, rejected that and said, "Oh, this is bad music. We should pay attention to Joni Mitchell and James Taylor and people like that." uh, and I think that was wrong. But today, now I see people all the time, cross genres without blinking, and I think that's a great thing. And I've been putting some thought into that, and there are a lot of factors, but one of the big factors I think is the festivals that have
Mm-hmm.
been such a big thing in music over the last 25 or 30 years. When they really, you start to, you think about the early ones like Lollapalooza and Little Fair and things like that, where, they now we have Coachella and Bonnaroo and, and now every town's got a festival or two. And, and to draw the number of people that you need to do that, you look at the variety of those acts, and then
Mm-hmm.
now you're exposing people to a variety of sounds, and there's nothing but greatness out of that.
Well, and I think too, I mean, that was, one of the big ones, Woodstock, right?
What was that?
You
What?
would what? Yeah, I think that happened in 1969 too, right?
It
But
did
it
happen in
it
1969.
did.
Yes,
Oh my
yes,
gosh.
yes, yes.
But it's one of those, as again, because I was going back and kind of,
Yeah, I guess there's the first big festival, huh? Well, it was definitely the one that gets all the press. Put it that
it
way.
gets all the press. But to me, it was interesting, a lot of the things that kind of went into that, and kind of from a social standpoint, right? Is,
Mm-hmm.
you know I can only imagine a lot of the kids that started heading that way. They found out there was something going on, and when they get there, went, "Holy shit! There's 500,000 of us sitting here," right?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
remember, from a lot of the different documentaries and other things, of people saying, "I had no idea that there were this many people
Who
that
felt
like
the same
who
way
felt
I
the
did?
same way I
Yeah,
do."
yeah, yeah.
And to me, that's such a beautiful thing. And I think even today, though, that's still the case. There's a lot of people that are out there thinking, well, I'm the only one that feels this way, but you're not.
No, no,
Right?
you're
There's a
not.
lot of
Uh,
people that feel the same
yeah.
way. And if we could, kind of remember some of that stuff and have more of these opportunities, like you said, like the music festivals or other things like this, for people that maybe feel marginalized or feel on the outer ring of a particular area, to realize there's a lot of people just like you, and it's okay to be you. It's okay to put flowers in your hair and go around barefoot and smoke pot or whatever I'm just from a hippie standpoint, but there's other things too, right? That we're not, we're so much more alike than we realize.
Oh, that's true across the planet.
Mhm.
People on an individual level are pretty much want the same things. They want food, shelter, security, education for their children, um, some health care as they get older, and an ability to make the life that they want to lead. Everybody wants that. Now, some of us get more options than others, and I think we'd like to see a little bit more equalization of that. um, but to your point, yeah, we all basically want the same thing as individuals. It's positions of power that start to um, divide and convince groups of people that they deserve more or less, and are willing to go and get it from somebody else. Kind of like what we're seeing in Ukraine right now. This is and we're going to talk music and politics and culture and technology. That's what we talk about here with Rock and Roll Archaeology. So I rarely get a chance to mix current affairs in. I'm usually looking from the past, and trying to make a point of why we live in the world that we live in today. But let this, if you think about this thing in Ukraine, it's one man that has made this decision, and that to me is just fucked up. And now you look at the destruction that has been created in this short period of time, to the point of what we all should consider are war crimes. And for what? For because you're paranoid, because you're afraid. Yeah, maybe Vladimir should have spent more time listening to some Bob Dylan, huh?
Yeah, or at least Kumbaya. Pull out the guitar and start playing Kumbaya.
Yeah. Obviously, he did not get back in the USSR and understood it. So,
no, he didn't understand that song at all, did he? But anyway, well, no, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about what you're doing there with Pantheon too, because I think again it's for any musical nerds like me, that don't know about what you guys are doing. You need to know about what they're doing, because it's pretty fucking cool. So you want to just kind of spend a couple minutes just kind of sharing kind of what you've kind of pulled together there, because again, I think it's pretty amazing and people need to know about it.
Yeah. So Pantheon Podcasts, or Pantheon Media, the official name. We just recognized that there was going to be a lot of podcasts out there. There are now 2.8 million podcasts available. And like a lot of content, the big question is always about discovery. How do you separate yourself from that sea of mediocrity out there? And we just kind of felt that if we could work in a very particular vertical, being music, then we would kind of become a safe harbor for people who are interested in finding music related podcasts. And we started with our own. Rock and Roll Archaeology is the cornerstone of Pantheon. And we started building shows around that, because it does take us quite a bit of time to research, right, and put those shows out. We do about 2 or 3 a year. And, and so we get our fans going, okay, can you do something else in between? And we said, yeah. So we started coming up with these originals. We came up with 6 originals. And then we started making podcasts for other third parties, some corporate clients and some celebrities and things like that. And then the next thing we know, we had people contacting us saying, hey, we want to be a part of your network. And so we put a lot of time and effort over the last 3 years building the Pantheon Podcast Network. And we have 90 plus shows now. We are music agnostic. We love it all. If I could find a music show on Bollywood or Hindi music, I would put it on in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. We are constantly expanding the palette for our audience. Obviously we kind of came from classic rock and that era and kind of look back. But we've brought in current shows that are looking at new rap artists. We've got a new show called The Wrap Up that actually goes out and tries to find new
like up and coming rappers.
And up and comers. And conversely, we also brought on Soren Baker with his show, Unique Entertainment, which he's got 30 years of some of the greatest hip hop artists on interview. And he is exposing that for the first time. He's a well-known music journalist in that space. We've got music shows from the 80s. We have music shows specifically about Kiss or Bob Dylan. Well, now there's 2 sides of the coin for you, right? So we love it all, and we're trying to find as many diverse voices to tell those tales, to expose how special this particular time was, and that it can be recreated again if people want it. The music today, a lot of people say, oh, the music today sucks. I disagree. I there's just so much of it. The problem is that your music, your kind of favorite music, just isn't commoditized, valued, or promoted to the top of the charts out there. But if you're interested in, let's say Swedish death metal, well, there's plenty of Swedish death metal out there to be had. No problem.
One of my stepsons Finnish death metal.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
right.
There's a big difference. I know they're both Scandinavian, but no. I mean, this kid has actually like learned Finnish and everything else.
Oh my God.
He's got a thing for Finnish metal bands. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, as long as he doesn't eat anybody, he's okay. Because I believe that actually did end with the Finnish death metal, or black metal, or whatever metal it is. Guys, please give me a break. But the fact is that look, we think it's all valuable. That there's something that of interest to anybody's palate, and what we like to do is create a deeper emotional connection to that music. And I think through storytelling, we're able to achieve that. And that makes the music even more valuable than it is by just listening to it.
Well, I think it does. And it's even, again, we were in the green room where we were talking a little bit about Weird Al, right? Yeah. Again, one of my heroes. I got to meet a couple. Well, you got to meet a little while ago, right? So, one of my heroes. I mean, I remember growing up, having to stay up late listening to Dr. Demento just so I could hear Weird Al songs, and he DJ'd some of those shows as well. But he is just one of those guys too. And I know you just met him. I mean, you just talked to him a little bit, but
super genius. Yeah,
super genius guy, and you know more than I do. I just remember a couple of things. Like one time, I remember some journalist saying, Weird, Al, you're actually a pretty good musician. Why do you play this silly music? And he makes some comment about, well, aren't there enough people doing that already?
Yeah. Well, I love his quote from the announcement of the current biopic that the trailer with Daniel Radcliffe just came out this week. Which, look, this is a send up of the biopic. It is not an actual. Please don't go and expect to actually see the Weird Al story, because that is not what you're going to get. And nor should you. But when they announced it, he said, "I promised my fans that every 33 years I will make a movie." Because the last movie he made, which was UHF, was 33 years ago. It's just because that's how he thinks. But look, no other comedy musician in history has even gotten close to what Al has achieved. I personally think, and you and I, we're gonna start this process right now to get Weird Al into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
He deserves to be there, man.
Completely. Another
absolutely.
A lot of friends are pushing the Monkees, and I agree with that too. I think culturally, the Monkees had a huge impact on making rock and roll a bigger part of the firmament. Now, maybe they helped commoditize it.
Well, that's what the whole thing was about.
Which they maybe railed against later on. Certainly Mike Nesmith did. And by going and creating the first national band and helping develop the alt country scene in the early 70s. But they deserve to be in the Rock Hall as well. But, hey, look, you can't be serious all the time, and rock and roll is not serious all the time. And if we get the Monkees and Weird Al in, I'm going for Spinal Tap after that. So.
Oh yeah. Turn it up to 11, baby. Turn it up to 11.
Right. No, well, I don't know. I think they belong in the Rock Hall more than Dolly Parton does. And I love Dolly Parton. Don't get me wrong, but
Well,
Come on, it's a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, man.
I know, but how many songs has she written that nobody knows she wrote that people have covered, and that's probably why, from a songwriter perspective.
Yeah, but then maybe we should change the name to, the Pop Music Hall of Fame or something like that. Might be it's just getting to be not really rock and roll. It's especially on the softer type of stuff. I disagree with the people who say, well, hip hop does. Well, no. Hip hop is the music of the street. Rock and roll is the music of the street. The point of that was that, you and a couple buddies could make it fairly easily. And I don't mean make it big. I mean just make it. So and that and you can do that with both rock and roll originally and hip hop today. So I believe hip hop is the closest thing to actual rock and roll. So like when Eminem got in yesterday, which totally, completely, and utterly deserved. Now maybe positionally wise, we should have had a couple of early black acts get in first, but the guy definitely deserves it. No two ways about that. I believe that. But country music, they got their own rock, got their own Hall of Fame, right?
Yes, they do. Been to it,
and it's great, and I love it. I've been to it too. Yeah. In fact, look, I got the Ryman hat on.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
So to each their own, but maybe if we're going to categorize things, then let's use some sort of scientific methodology. I don't know.
Well, but you and I know there's some political things behind it. So anyway, yeah.
But Weird Al, Spinal Tap, the Monkees all belong in the Rock and Roll Hall.
Well, and I love, one of the things that I love about him too is I didn't realize, I think it was when he was doing something with Jay Leno, they were doing their driving the car thing or something like that. But he was talking about, do you know how he got his name, Weird Al, how he came up with that?
I think I do, but you'll have to pull it out of my head.
So when it was junior high or high school, tall, gangly kind of kid, right? And people used to call him Weird Al because they thought he looked weird, right? Yeah. And instead of like most of us do,
he embraced it. Yeah,
he embraced it. He not only embraced it, I mean, he fucking took it to the bank, right? Yeah. About that it's all right to be weird. It's all right to be different than other
white
people.
And nerdy. He
is. I love that song, man.
But for those of you who don't know, Al is was an accelerated young man. He went to San Luis Obispo, SLO, the tech college up there, to be an architect when he was 14 years old. So he was kind of like a Doogie Howser. And, back in that time, if you weren't the accepted American male model, ready for the football game and all of that, then you were weird. So I'm Weird Christian. I think you're
I'm Weird Jason,
right? So
that's right.
I'm all good with it.
Oh man, no. It's been great talking to you. I mean, it's I geeked out, and I think too. I mean, it's you're the kind of guy that I consider like a brother from another mother kind of thing, where it's like, I
feel the same way.
Well, I mean, because we both, view the world in a certain way, or just trying to help and make it better. And like you said,
I'm sorry, you mean the right way.
Yes, right. Because there's always a right and a wrong way.
There's only one way. Right.
Yeah. Oh man,
live and let live, man. That's like we said, the counterculture is the culture, and the whole point of the counterculture was, hey, look, we don't have to just grow up and be baby making machines and clock in and clock out and and die and go to heaven. There's something more to life. We're here to experience it. And lucky for us, we were born at a time when that became an acceptable way of living, even though a lot of people were against it. It still happened, and it infected the rest of the culture, in mostly good ways. It's mostly a positive experience. Nobody's suggesting on this side of the fence that you have to live life this way too. You just got to let us live it that way if that's what we want to do. You can go and live the weird, crazy way you want to live, and we kind of think it's kind of weird too, but it's okay. It's all good because we're weird. You just need to be weirder too. I think that. So let's just make this all about Weird Al. Weird Al is the prophet of this generation, or this era. He is our Jesus. Are
we going to be living in an Amish paradise?
In an Amish paradise, yes, of course we will. Yes, yeah, and we will wake up and beat it every day while we eat our rocky road. And
yeah. Because I'm fat from eating all my rocky road.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I think it's again, good lessons for, so many people in this world are stressed out. They're freaking out. They're under a lot of pressure and stress, music.
There's good reason to be.
Well,
you got a madman with a bunch of nuclear weapons, beating up on his fucking neighbor, and threatening everybody else at the same time. What a fucking dick. That guy's a fucking dick. Period. End of story. Okay. We just went through a 2-year pandemic. And then of course, we here had to, live 4 years with an imbecile in charge, an incompetent, and I don't want to go too far down this other than that, I can disagree. I disagreed with many of our presidents in the past, but at least I always knew that they had, the country's interests at heart. And I mean the country, not themselves. This imbecile was all about himself, number one, and he was fucking incompetent at everything. So no wonder everybody's stressed out. That reminds me, I need to re-up my prescription for Ativan. So
thanks for reminding you. Up it and take it with a vodka or whiskey chaser.
Oh too. Yeah,
that'll improve the potency of it as well.
Yeah, you said something about cannabis and marijuana. You can have that. So, yeah. And I'm not the only one. Look, even my mom takes fucking pot jellies these days.
We're legal in California, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and it's but again, it's the part of it too of what I kind of go back to is music helps us chill out too in a lot of ways. It does, right?
It does. We should all do more of that. And it's funny. And let's maybe end with this. Is we spent this time talking about rock and roll, and I'm sure your audience has figured out that I'm a goddamn fucking communist pink. I'm not really. They just think I am. I believe in socialism, like Social Security, like Medicare, things like that. But I also have been an entrepreneur, my whole life. And I believe in capitalism. I just don't believe in unfettered capitalism. I believe that capitalism, like the NFL, needs fucking rules or people die. It's just this. I don't know. It just seems like logic to me, But I'm wearing this Ryman hat here, Mother Church. I love country music. And I love Nashville, and I love the South. And all this fucking music comes from there. It started down there, and I just don't understand why. We can't all, in the words of Rodney King, get along.
Yeah, just get along, love each other. And again, I mean, that's where I come back to the Woodstock.
Embrace our differences.
The
greatness. Yes.
Yeah. And just have some peace and love and listen to music with each other because, let it be, let everything else be. Just love each other. Summer of 69, baby. If we could just live the love summer of 69.
Yeah.
And continue to keep it forward. Again, even if there's crazy shit going on in the world around us, at least in our little bubble of people that are around us, the people that we love, the people that we're trying to take care of, at least we can have that kind of circle and summer of love with the people that we interact with, right? And at least if we
I
can't
just like to
change
see
the
that
whole
circle
world,
get bigger and bigger. And I just think, it's just the simple way to live life. Why complex your life out being angry at other people and how they live? As long as it doesn't really affect you. And it doesn't really, a gay pride flag does not really affect you. It's not. Look, the second that they start knocking on your door and saying you got to be gay, I'm on your side. I promise. But I also know that's never fucking going to happen. So, anyway, we could do this all day long.
Yes, we could. But unfortunately, we've got other stuff we got to get going on. And because we got our own spreading of love and kindness and everything that we're doing. And I'm sure you've got plenty of other podcasts and things to get out there.
Work. I got to go to work is what I got to do.
You gotta go to work.
This is fun for me to talk about Pantheon and rock and roll archaeology and, just life in general, being philosophical for an hour is fun. So I appreciate that, Jason, allowing.
Well, that's why this is one of the
platform to do that.
One of the favorite things that I love doing is exactly having these kind of conversations and sharing them and sending them out. Again, like we talked about before, music up until the recording industry and radio and some of this other stuff, people all throughout the world couldn't get access to some of this stuff. Now we got technology, we got podcasts, we got radio, we got streaming music, we got everything. There's YouTube. There's so many ways for people literally all over the world to hear music, hear stories, hear people talking about trying to make the world a better place. And we have an opportunity, and both you and I and people that are listening are doing their little part. So let's just keep making this, our little bubble bigger and bigger and bigger so that we can, love and care for more people. And that's what I want, man. Peace and love. Peace and love. Peace, love, music.
To quote Ringo, peace and love. That's what we're trying to do at Pantheon, is to, provide a large place for, playground for people to come and, learn about this music and the people who made it, and from the top to the bottom. We just launched a new show called Backstage Pass, a limited series that we did in association with Sony's The Orchard, that is about the early lighting guys in the UK, mostly out of ESP Lighting in the early 70s. And, really, they all came out of the theater business. And, that's what created those spectaculars of, the 1970s, the ability when sound and light and the production values got to be something more than just, a postage stamp stage and some white lights that the Beatles had to deal with throughout their touring career. From those guys, to the highest peaks of rock stardom, we try to tell all those stories from a variety of sources and a variety of perspectives out there.
Yep. Well, so again, check out the show notes below, because we'll have links to go out there. But with 90 plus channels, you're already listening to a podcast right now. You like podcasts, so go listen to some other ones, right? It's like click subscribe and hey, here you go. Yep. So, but Christian, thank you for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
It's a great time talking to you, and we'll have to do it again.
Talk soon.
All right, see you.